not be the party of freedom.
On that point, quickly, let's take a look at this. We watched Tim Walz earlier talking about football, which was very painful for me. But because he is the man of freedom, and because he loves, everyone's trying to redefine the word, we pull a clip of him talking last night about what it means to be a free man in Minnesota or some such.
Because this is a big part about what this election is about. Freedom. When Republicans use the word freedom, they mean that the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. Corporations, free to pollute your air and water. And banks, free to take advantage of customers. But when we Democrats talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make a better life for yourself and the people that you love.
All right, Matt, this is for both of you. And I should say to the people at home that might recognize Matt Welch, I do, in fact, do a podcast with Matt Welch. I will take it easy on you because we're pals, but you are at Reason Magazine. You are, for some reason, and I can't quite figure this out, maybe you include this in your answer, you are so exercised about COVID in schools that everyone's kind of forgotten about COVID in a way. And you're talking in your sleep about it. We do a podcast and we're like, we got to get him to stop talking about COVID in schools. But just want to point out.
Can I interject here? You asked a question earlier about how live this issue is.
Yeah.
When Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia, it was
2021.
In 2021.
October 2021.
It was an interesting event, and I live in the bluest county, in the bluest part of Virginia. Very wealthy, and certainly one that was very much in favor of Democratic policies up and down. And yet, there was this sign that people would put out in front of their houses that would indicate what they felt about politics. And it wasn't a Glenn Youngkin sign. It was a reopen Alexandria schools.
Wow.
That was the sign. And if you saw that sign, you knew, oh, we know who that person's voting for, and it's not the Democrat in this race. This issue is still very live. Parents are still very upset about this. It's not something that has gone away. It's not something that will go away, because there is no confidence that when you see a politician who is being endorsed by all the people who locked everything down, who put your kids in a box, who led to the loss of jobs for many of these people who are in the middle and lower classes, who tried to make things work but didn't have the ability to afford childcare and the like, that is very much still live, and that resentment still endures. Now, how much that actually will matter in a presidential election, I can't say, but I do think that it is a very live issue, and I think that Kamala Harris, Randy Weingarten, Tim Walz, and the rest of the Democratic, the way that they're pushing this forward, they are all on the wrong side of that issue. And I don't think that they have ever, at any point, admitted that they did anything wrong. And I think that that's a problem.
Do you think that the Freedom rebrand could appeal to Nikki Haley voters?
Not at all. I mean, I just they.
That's who it's for, right? I mean, that's who it's
they're
targeted.
trying.
It's so independent. It's just people who are not Democrats.
Yeah,
and
not partisan.
Don't feel like otherwise super.
Well, okay, as a libertarian, isn't that sort of designed?
I'd rather them say freedom than not freedom. I like the rhetoric, but I also don't believe them at all.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Nikki Haley voters are looking at Kamala Harris and saying she's definitely going to be a great defender of Israel? Because I don't. And that's something that Nikki Haley voters care about a lot more than your average sort of Republican voter. I have not seen any effort on their part to reach across the aisle. Now, the flip side of that is I didn't see any effort on the Republicans' part to reach across the aisle.
Well, Sean O'Brien,
there's that.
Maybe that.
No, and sort of culturally, there's the Republican convention, which we've all forgotten about. We've forgotten about the Republican convention. We've forgotten that Donald Trump almost got assassinated. Barack Obama's speech
in the last 2 months,
that didn't happen.
In the last 2 months, we've had one president almost assassinated, the other politically assassinated. You know, we've had a complete upheaval in terms of American politics, and yet this race seems to be almost exactly the same as it was 2 months ago.
Kind of and kind of. Well, I mean, like, I think Kamala Harris is doing better than Joe Biden was 2 months ago in that sense. But I just want to point out that the Republican convention was kind of fun, and it was different than Republican conventions of yore. I watched most of it at home, and it was like fascinating. Different cast of characters, much less scripted, by the way, than the Democratic convention. For those out there who really care about like message discipline, they didn't say freedom 94 times like they did yesterday.
But Matt, we're going to do the hard work and then the hard work.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, one of the interesting things of having been at that convention where we did this show, it was that, you know, I've said this a number of times, and I said this on the show that Matt and I do together, The Fifth Column. I didn't see a lot of people that I knew there. And I've been around D.C. and been around these circles a long time. And what you used to see a lot of people you knew who were from different kind of areas of the right, whether it's Cato Institute and the Libertarians, AEI, the sort of neocon types. And it was a party that had really sewn up who it was. It had been locked it down at that point. It's a little more tumultuous here. You have the Israel stuff. You have people like we had Nina here last night, and she was talking about how she didn't, after we were filming, and we did record this, so it was actually on the record, and she said, you know, sometimes I don't even feel like I want to be a Democrat. And she enumerated the reasons, and you have this kind of thing where there's still, like, they haven't, from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris, and the surprising thing for me is the war against 2020. Right? I mean, everything Kamala Harris did in 2019, undeclared war against 2020, is that Barack Obama, you know, takes a jab at what we, you know, for lack of a better word, call wokeness, right? AOC taking a picture with the hostage family. You know, this move away from identity politics in a very explicit way. There are, of course, a number of, I mean, this happens in both conventions.
They just, for
calls
instance,
to it, but yeah.
Today they had the Central Park 5 on, and who did they follow that up with? About 75 consecutive prosecutors.
Yep.
And then a cop. And then a cop.
And then a cop. And they tried to make it seamless.
In the same way that they did Bernie Sanders and then Pritzker. Which was just a beautiful.
I mean, one of the dumbest moments. I mean, I'm an actual billionaire. It's like, no, that's really not reading the room. People are like, I guess that's good. All right. Well, earlier today, I talked to one of my pals over at Axios. And now we have somebody else. We have a lot of these partisan hacks here, like Matt Welch and Ben Domenech. And but now I want to bring on
two people who keep throwing their votes away.
Yes, two people who have thrown their votes away for I don't know how many years. But Hans Nichols is an Axios, I think the White House correspondent. Hans is going to tell us as he ambles his way in. See, we're doing awkwardly. Yes. Hans Nichols, you're the White House correspondent for Axios, right?
The title's political correspondent.
But
if you want to give me the raise,
I gave you the raise, and I'm going to give a downgrade to the person who told me that that's what your title was. So they get fired, and you get a raise. Hans, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I feel like I've walked into what I expected a fraternity house to look like at the University of Chicago.
Yeah.
You say a little bit messy, fun people, co-ed, right? So we're going to keep the flatstones down.
Been at one of those. This is much cooler.
Okay. It just feels like it's someone in the corner is arguing about Oakshot.
Yeah, we're going to do doing shots with Albert Wohlstetter. We are.
Where's Joseph Epstein?
On the final day of this convention. I take it you've been inside the convention.
I have, yeah. That's my greatest accomplishment.
I mean, amazing. I gave up after the first 2-hour line and cut the line thereafter. But give us a broad sense of what you make of this.
It's remarkable the amnesia that we've had from day 1 to now we're on day 4, right? It's like it's like they did a political burial. Now they've moved on to this sort of, it's not a shotgun marriage, it's just a marriage that everyone pretends that they're happy with. And I think they legitimately are. Like when you talk to Democrats at the highest levels, sort of the party strategists to sort of rank and file people, the people on the floor, everyone's very excited about Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And so, look, sometimes shotgun marriages can work. They can be lasting. They can be loving, and they can produce, mini offspring. I have no strong opinions on shotgun marriages, although I don't know if other people.
I want to ask you.
No, it sounds like
Well,
you
it's like how I feel about arranged marriages. Like they kind of work sometimes.
Yeah.
In some cultures they work. They don't work in our culture.
Didn't Day One feel a little bit like Jack Nicholson in The Departed saying, he felt funny?
Yeah.
It felt like an assassination.
The question
I don't disagree with that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty clear. I mean, he made the decision to endorse her under duress. He was
Yeah.
forced out. I mean, the reporting bears this out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right, so
assassination is a little hot, but like,
You did some great reporting. You had a great piece at Axios about.
Thank you.
It was pretty dishy, actually. About
Alex did all the real reporting. Must have been a co-byline.
Yeah.
It was about the real animosity between Obama and Trump, but also you were telling us earlier that there was another Axios piece that had a kind of
Was
Michelle
Alex?
Obama.
Well, yes. And
The
to
Alex
that.
piece was very good because
Very good.
Yeah, there's bad blood between
So, yeah,
Michelle.
can you lay it all out?
Big
Give us the
picture.
TMZ.
Can you give
Yeah.
us the criminology on
Yeah.
that? Because I
I
think it's
should
actually
bring,
really...
Alex is co-writing another story with me right now, but I should bring him in. But the bad blood between Michelle and the Bidens stems from the relationship between Bo, Hunter, and Kathleen. Okay, and like I want to be.
Kathleen is?
Kathleen Kathleen is Hunter Biden's first wife, whom he left to start an affair with his deceased brother's widow.
As you do.
Right. So, and I want to be like, I always catch myself on this, like, to make sure I'm getting it right. Michelle and Kathleen, so the first wife and the then first lady, were very close. Kids roughly the same age. They just had a good relationship, as people in Washington sometimes do form real friendships. They apparently did. And then when Kathleen was thrown to the side, Michelle sort of was on Team Kathleen. And so there was bad blood there, and Alex is really sort of, like, everything I should say is according to Alex Thompson, because he really plumbed that part of the relationship out.
Yeah.
Okay?
So bad blood between Michelle Obama and the Bidens on the one hand.
And Michelle did not mention Biden in her speech.
Correct.
Not once.
Right?
Yeah, as Alex pointed out.
That's like an interesting little nugget.
Yeah.
This is what,
Very telling.
So then fast forward to sort of the Obama-Trump relationship, and it was always personal from the beginning. I mean, this is going to sound like, like just way too douchey, but I'll say it anyway. I just remember looking at Donald Trump in 2011 at the White House Correspondents Association party, and I had a clean view, and I'm like, I don't know, like in 2011, did any of us really know who Donald Trump was? Like, he was the guy who was in Home Alone. We were aware of him as like a cultural figure, but we didn't really know that he had, fairly thought out political views. He just wasn't there.
And I think he showed up to CPAC in 2012. Was that right? Because he showed up early before he ran.
Yeah,
I was at this one. Yeah.
He'd flirted with it before.
Yeah,
and I
because I don't think he had done it in 2008 because then he was still in the Reform Party.
He was in the Reform Party.
Yeah.
Right.
He was gone
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
And Obama had that, withering takedown because remember, Obama dispatched his lawyers to go back to Hawaii to find his birth certificate because Trump was lodging this ugly sort of birther claim.
Yeah.
And you can say what you want, and remember 2011, like the only people I always give him credit for it that kind of knew something was off at that White House Correspondents' Dinner was the Golf Channel. Because they noticed it was odd that Barack Obama played 9 holes, not 18. And as someone that had to be and that was the Osama bin Laden.
John King.
Oh, that's
John
right.
King show.
Yeah,
They
John
mentioned
King's
Golf Channel.
greatest television appearance. When
So,
it comes
and as
back,
someone
yeah.
that got stuck in a lot of pool duty with Obama until we found interns to do it, where you'd go out to Andrews Air Force Base and you'd hang out at the Burger King while the president played golf. We should have picked that up, like because at the time it was a wire report.
That Burger King is so
Were you
shitty.
on that pool back
No,
then?
I was not. Yeah, at that point, yeah.
Wanted to blame
And so there's an interesting, you can kind of make this case that like a lot of our current politics stems from that 2011 White House Correspondence. And you can say what you want about Barack
But
Obama.
remind us what Obama said
Obama
then. Yeah.
focused the entire Washington and Acela establishment's disdain like a white-hot laser beam onto Donald Trump. Now,
In 2011.
2011, and like you can go back and look at his comments, and like I'm sure there's a joke about him being orange or whatever there was. But again, and Obama would he would laugh at his own jokes, but his professional joke writers. It's not for me to say whether or not it was funny, but he had the room thought it was funny, and the room thought it was devastating.
Yeah.
Actually, can I interject? Do we know who wrote those jokes or anything?
You usually do at the time. It's like a little game you
What's
play.
his face? The guy who does all the Hollywood jokes, by the way.
Yeah, there's usually what
Mark
they do.
Russell? I'm sorry.
Like what they do is
It's
the
like
speechwriters.
Puff and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not Jesselnick, because Jesselnick did the the jokes that Trump wrote.
But Hans, there's something.
But what I want
sorry.
to say is, I remember seeing, and it's hard to sort of imply a emotion to a person.
Yeah.
But I remember looking at Donald Trump and thinking he felt shame.
Yeah.
And I remember
It's pretty
thinking,
clear, right?
Yeah, and like we all like, I mean, those of us as kids, like when like, you know, I'm pro shaming, like when we can't shame anymore. Like shame is like an important human tool that we use. Like when
Shame is incredibly important.
yeah, when someone blunders, like you can shame your dog, right? Like I mean, shame is something we do. But I remember thinking, oh, he's ashamed, and then it built up, right? Yeah. And then
And that was after the birther thing or before? It was
No,
after, right?
after.
It was
That
in
was
retaliation.
Obama's revenge.
Right. That
and
was
then
his
Trump
revenge,
gets the
right.
better revenge, which is he wins the presidency. And he shows the entire White House, like, sort of establishment.
Hans, tell me who you quote in the piece. It's a very good piece over at Axios. You quote somebody.
Oh, that was made up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We don't cop for that anymore. All right, my mistake.
There's some quote in the piece, and I can't remember who it is close to Obama, which really stunned me when he said, you know, I said he shouldn't do this.
Oh, it was Bill Daley on the
It
record.
was Bill Daley on the record, yeah.
Sorry.
There's someone trying to rub on your...
It's okay. That happens a lot.
Yeah,
That's fine.
that's all right.
Like I said, it's a
I guess, yeah. So this is a thing that we do when we don't like your
I'm
answers.
sorry,
We
I
have a
didn't
man
know how
come in and
this
start.
mechanism worked.
Remember, I want everyone to remember this is the last night. I do off camera have a chalice of wine, but I'm being very sparing about it.
Here we are. We're talking at the Substack Lounge, and it's casual, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Substack.
I would just like to point out what you just said there is incredibly important, and I think people have forgotten it for the most part, which is that there's a ripple effect that comes from some of these things that we don't anticipate at the time. There's a ripple effect of, Donald Trump deciding to, for instance, have a list of people that he's going to name to the Supreme Court. A ripple effect of him
that one could have been determinative. That could have been why he won in 2016.
Exactly.
Because conservatives kind of made their peace.
Exactly. There's a ripple effect of, the fact that Antonin Scalia dies when he does. There's a ripple effect of, Hillary making the decisions that she did in terms of her own campaign. But I think the original ripple, the original stone, is the one that's thrown in right there in 2011 at that White House.
I thought you were going to blow my mind. Say it was when the Black Hands and Prince assassinated Archduke Ferdinand.
I'm not going to go all the way Silmarillion on you.
Another one that I think it's a great point. And also, Democrats lost their bench to the extent they had a bench.
Yes.
Under Obama.
Completely hollowed out.
Devastated the Democratic Party. Between 2008 and 2016, they lost tons of state houses, lost Congress, they lost this, they lost that.
And they didn't care about it because they had the presidency.
And they had a very charismatic figure at the top of the presidency.
So they were just like, everything's fine. It doesn't matter that we were losing all these lower down races.
Changed tort law, though, right? Changed tort law in a lot of states. It had serious implications.
But Hans, back to this when you were mentioning who
the Bill Daley quote.
Bill Daley quote says, I advised him not to make this joke. Is that kind of hindsight? That's kind of hindsight.
No,
could you have imagined that would have had that kind of butterfly effect?
I don't think it's fake hindsight, because I'll bet you if you asked Barack Obama, he'd say, "Yeah, I'd do it again." I don't think
he would say he would make that joke again.
I don't think I mean, at the time it was almost like Bill Daley thought it was just a little hot, maybe a little bit unpresidential, and but no one at the time thought that this joke was going to create a movement, let alone like a president, right? So
but
now,
Trump had talked about running for president before that. I mean, it's not.
To Barbara Walters and Maureen Dowd,
treated it
and
as
Oprah,
a joke.
And Oprah.
Yeah. Maybe they're wrong too, but they treated it as a joke.
But you're not suggesting that that's why Trump ran for office.
No, and I'd like to, because the story's too good. But I think there's been reporting on that gives lie to that myth. But I don't know. I don't want to say that for certain.
Can I give you one little piece of information that there's no reason for you to have? But at the time, I was married to a woman whose father worked for Donald Trump in New Jersey, and he immediately after that. He was the head of purchasing there for one of his casinos. He came and talked to me and talked about it and said, "Don's he's gonna run. He's gonna run for president. He's decided that he's going to do it because of this thing that happened." And he wasn't a particularly political guy, and so I believe him. I don't think that it was something that was.
No, yeah, I don't.
And I think if you actually go back and talk to people, they will say the same thing, which is just that he came back and he basically said, I'm going to shove it down his throat.